Dear colleagues, we're on day 180 of Ukraine's heroic resistance. My name is Natalia Staropravo, and this is the Mediacentru Ukraine. With us today is Olexandr Mischenko, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ukraine to Latvia. Hello, sir. Could you tell us what Latvia has been doing for Ukraine since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion? Hello. Latvia is one of the leading countries. Even before the invasion, they offered all kinds of help to us, and primarily military help. On the 23rd at 6, the earliest Stingers from Latvia arrived to Ukraine. I was then with the Foreign Minister of Latvia, who was starting his visit in Ukraine, and he intended to transfer these Stingers. I'm sure they were extremely useful to us and helpful to us, and helped us defend Hostomel when enemy helicopters were trying to take the airport. Additionally, Latvia has given us something like 33% of its defense budget in all types of weapons. Um, Essentially, 109 Ms. We've had 109 Ms sent from Latvia. This was, by the way, adopted uh, on July 28th by Parliament, and these howitzers were in Ukraine a week later. 4 military helicopters were also given recently, and as I've already said, they're providing every kind of weapon. Additionally, they take our military, they train our military to use these weapons, and recently they've started a program on receiving a Ukrainian military wounded. 34 people have so far arrived in Latvia. They're in hospitals of Riga and Jurmala, um, seeing treatment, getting their prosthetics fitted, and they will be eventually undergoing rehabilitation. I'm very happy to have met some of our military yesterday. They told us that when they were leaving, they had almost lost hope that one of them had his arm was wounded, that he would have a functional arm. And yesterday he told me that there has been significant progress, and he feels that he will renew function in his arm. I'm very happy. This provides hope to all of us and to our military and to the wounded to return to post-war life with the help of Latvian doctors. Additionally, Latvia has hosted some of our IDPs, or well, refugees, given them conditions to live safely, and provided opportunities for employment, schools and kindergartens, and other social assistance. So Latvia, this is all to say that Latvia, based on its GDP and budget, by percentage of budget and GDP, Latvia is one of the top 5 countries in the world by percent of how much of its GDP is given for Ukraine. As for Ukrainians who are in Latvia, how many Ukrainian citizens are in Latvia today, and how is Latvia supporting them? As of right now, there are about 37,000 Ukrainians, which for Latvia is a lot. About half of them are in the capital, in Riga. Like I said, all of them have been given basic social needs, and they've been given residence permits for a year, and social payments, and also equal rights with Latvians in all regards, except political rights. Of course, they cannot vote or stand to be elected. But as far as work, study, kindergartens, medical care, healthcare, all of this is equal to the Latvian citizens. We noticed that Latvia has prohibited public pronouncements to support Russia's war, and also they've started removing monuments glorifying the Soviet Union. How else is Russian propaganda being combated in Latvia today? Well, of course, this started even before the invasion. Latvia very clearly realizes what propaganda is, what Russian media is, what these monuments are, and so they've been doing this for a while. As for assistance specifically to Ukraine, Latvia is one of the first countries to have recognized this war, a genocide against the Ukrainian people. And also there was a historic session of the Saima where there was a resolution to recognize Russia as a terrorist state and a terrorist sponsor. And based on this, of course, the Latvian government are restricting Russian entry into Latvia. They're looking at their previously granted residence permits, and in future they intend not to accept Russian citizens except for extraordinary cases that have to do with death or illness, things like this. So Latvia understands, Latvia has no illusions about Russia's ability to negotiate. They understand that Ukraine is doing the work of destroying the Russian army in the front line, after which sanctions will help destroy the political system of today's criminal Putinite power. After which there might be condition to build some sort of democratic state. We know that Latvia's government have recognized Russia as the aggressor state. What was the story leading up to this? So the events, of course, the events in Ukraine, particularly the events in Bucha, Hostomel, Irpin, when the world saw what was going on in Ukraine, what the occupying forces have been doing, Latvia. But even before that, even prior to that, basically on the second day after the invasion, Latvia legally allowed its citizens to participate as volunteers in the Ukrainian army. Latvia understands that Ukraine needs comprehensive assistance, and we've had Latvians who have agreed to fight against Russian aggressors. And today in the Karpatska Sich battalion, we have a group of Latvians fighting for Ukraine and fighting for Latvia in Ukraine. Latvia has also cancelled visas for Russians. How do these restrictions work now? Um, they work literally as announced. This was introduced, and they work on the border between Latvia and Russia. There's a questionnaire procedure. The bodies come in and look at everyone with a working visa. They look at this and the restrictions are quite harsh. There are only exceptional cases, I think, where Russians might get into Latvia these days. Others are turned away, and visas are not turned on. What do the Russians do who are living in Latvia today? How will the situation change for them, and what is the attitude to them in Latvia? I mean, there are different categories of Russians. There are Russians who are entirely patriots of Russia, of Latvia, who have long lived in Latvia, who have residence permits, who condemn Russia, who condemn Russia's occupation or Soviet occupation of Latvia. These Russians are entirely adapted to the Latvian life, and they're entirely aware, conscious citizens of this country. There is another category that I suspect under influence from the Kremlin who try to use their civic rights in Latvia to infiltrate the Sejm. By the way, the parliamentary elections in Latvia are coming on October 1st, and you have the pro-Russian parties trying to use these rights and enter parliament, somehow change Latvia's policy, Latvia's pro-European and pro-Ukrainian policy. These Russians who live here temporarily or have recently arrived, if they are involved in any kinds of events to support Russia's war, they're immediately detained by the law enforcement bodies, and they're rid of the right for permanent residency. I mean, there's an established procedure. This is entirely legal. So people are only allowed to hold events or rallies within the bounds of the law, but symbols supporting Russia's aggression are prohibited. Considering that Russia is a neighboring country with Latvia, Latvia is probably expecting support from the NATO countries. How is NATO strengthening Latvia's defense capacity? Well, NATO and Latvia are very clear who they're dealing with regard to Latvia's neighbor Russia, which is why NATO is doing all it can to strengthen its Baltic flank. But in spite of that, Latvia is sending us ammunition, weapons, and ammo, understanding that the front line is in Ukraine, their front line, not only ours. And this is precisely the political weight of Latvia, who provides example along with other Baltic states and Poland. They are something of an engine of the EU in the sense of bringing understanding that Ukraine needs help. First, yes, for Ukraine's sake, but also to protect their own borders. So on the one hand, there's a strengthening of NATO's presence in Latvia, but on the other hand, there's a maximal strengthening of Ukraine's army in order to defend Ukraine and the EU in the territory of Ukraine. We also know that Latvia have stopped cooperating with Russia in various spheres. Are there spheres of life in which Latvia is still working with Russia? I think practically no. I would like to say that since the first days, since the invasion, Latvia has stopped all cooperation, whether sister cities or sister universities. All of this ceased. Us together with the trade with the trade chamber of commerce of Latvia and chamber of commerce of Ukraine have held a campaign to stop buying Russian products, and we're replacing all of these with Ukrainian products, Ukrainian goods, and Russian goods are no longer entering Latvia, whether foods or other types of produce. For instance, I was at a factory where 75% at a factory that was sending 75% of its production to Russia and Belarus. Nevertheless, they immediately stopped supplying those markets. And we're working with these producers in order to either provide our produce. For instance, in Kharkiv, where people don't have access, Latvia provides a platform for all Ukrainian companies to restore their operations in Latvia temporarily, which then, of course, provides them access to the European market. Additionally, in the early September, there will be the largest international exhibition where over 65 Ukrainian companies have already applied, when together with the Chamber of Commerce and the exporters of the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry, we're working to represent Ukraine to a significant extent in this exposition and to help our entrepreneurs to enter European markets. This, of course, supports the Ukrainian budget, which of course supports the Ukrainian army in acquiring all sorts of ammunitions and weapons for our armed forces. Pan Alexandre, from what you personally have heard, what is being said in Latvia about Russia's full-scale invasion into Ukraine? What is the response, and why does Latvia support Ukraine? Well, like I said, Latvia has significant immunity against Russia's propaganda due to the 50 years of having been under the Soviet Union. Latvia never stopped its resistance. Latvia always supported the end of this occupation, which is why they supported Ukraine even prior to the full-scale invasion. Yesterday there was a concert by Sviatoslav Vakarchuk, and we were at the Riga's mayor's office, and Riga's vice mayor showed the flag that they raised on February 14th. I think this was one of the first examples when a mayor's office raised the Ukrainian flag, and then a week later, 30 cities of Latvia raised the Ukrainian flag. This was even before the invasion. Latvia understands and helps promote our interests where we are absent, in the European Union and in NATO. Both the foreign minister and the defense minister of Latvia are all calling on the European countries to provide maximal support for Ukraine, because it's precisely in the contact line, in the fighting in Ukraine, is that the question of the EU is being contested. And I think thanks to that promotion and support from the Baltic states and other countries, more and more countries, more and more EU members and NATO members understand the danger proceeding from. Thank you very much. With us was Olexandr Mischenko, Ambassador Extraordinary Plenipotentiary to Latvia. This concludes our briefings for today. Please follow our announcements on Mediacentru Ukraine and stay with us, because we're another day closer to our victory.